Hi, and welcome to Construction Update. These are the top 10 stories contractors are reading this week. My name's Larry Stewart. I'm with 4constructionpros.com.
Hi, Larry. I'm Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan. Number 10 on the list this week is Terex trucks renamed Rockback to reflect future focus in hauling. So, articulated hauler specialist Terex Trucks has been rebranded, and that new brand name is there to launch a new chapter in this Scottish company's history. 7 years and millions of pounds of investment into its ownership by the Volvo Group.
I like that name, Rockback. It seems construction.
Yeah, Rocky.
Next, construction spending is stable, and non-residential is meaningfully worse than it appears. The U.S. Census Bureau released data early September on the residential and non-residential spending for construction. Of note was a 25.3% growth in residential spending, but a 7.5% drop in non-residential spending compared to the first 7 months of 2020. This is interesting because due to the pandemic, forecasts were saying that more people were likely going to spend more money on their backyards since they couldn't take that big trip. Do you know if there's any growth at all in non-residential spending, or was it just down across the board?
Yeah, there was some brighter spots. I mean, you got to dive pretty deep into the data. And public outlays on highway and street projects rose 1.9%. And there was growth in the public power, commercial, and conservation and development projects. They all saw sturdy gains. Like you said, people did spend money on home construction. I mean, that's really where the growth is, and it's crazy to have those kind of numbers in growth in residential spending, and that's really carrying things. So in this non-residential malaise has been ongoing, for months now. Non-residential spending is down 7.5% for the first 7 months of the year compared to the first 7 months of 2020, which I guess is really not that surprising given that non-residential spending has a lot of momentum. They're big projects. They kept working through the summer last year, and the lag is kind of natural in recessions for non-residential spending. But there's some real factors in play here as a result of the pandemic that we'll talk about in just a minute. Number 8 on the list is how drones transformed Hensel Phelps' daily construction operations, schedules, and costs. This big contractor went into Honolulu's Inuit International Airport job thinking drones would be useful in some segments of the project. And the technology quickly progressed to informing and improving aspects of the work every day. And this is a podcast that I recorded with Carter Johnson, who's virtual design and construction engineer with Hensel Phelps Pacific. He describes how the crew went from finding valuable ways to apply drone data in one of the contractor's first applications of the technology until it was contributing every day to every aspect of planning and safely executing this terminal replacement job. As people on the project figured out, how much real data they could get, how much accurate, weekly, up-to-date kind of data they could get, they just kept applying it to more and more things until they were using it in daily briefings. So it's an interesting story.
I'm always fascinated about how much information and data can be used and helps the project along on a daily basis, and not just, oh, hey, here's a picture of everything in the sky, but like so much data can be used. You just got to be smart enough to be able to analyze and work through it.
Yeah, and this conversation kind of gets into that.
The cause of more construction job losses in August, more serious than COVID-19 Delta. The construction industry lost 3,000 jobs in August, according to the Associated Builders and Contractors analysis of data released by the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. I hate that word. The industry has recovered 79.2 of the jobs lost during the earlier stages of the pandemic. However, the construction unemployment rate actually declined from 6.1 in July to 4.6 in August. So we're looking good. However, it's not as simple as blaming COVID and the Delta variant. According to the chief economist of the Associated Builders and Contractors, He says that while the pandemic had an impact, construction unemployment dynamics were more affected by ongoing supply side bottlenecks. This honestly feels like a paradox. Unemployment declines, but the supply shortages seem to put a halt to everything. And then Delta stops working from being able to work at all. Do you know some of the projections?
There's no simple way to discuss this. It shows the complexity of any economic system. For ABC contractors, with their intense focus on non-residential construction, the good news is that weak employment numbers will help keep interest rates low for a longer period of time. That's a paraphrase of one of their quotes. But if you look at it from the perspective of the Associated General Contractors, they say that material and labor supply leading to project cancellations are a key reason why 26% of respondents to their recent survey expect it'll take more than 6 months for their revenue to match year earlier levels. And 17% are unsure when to expect that return. AGC's president, Stephen Sanders, says, quote, "The good news is that these challenges are driven by the pandemic and policy responses to it instead of underlying market conditions." And he anticipates that once the pandemic wanes and people return to the labor force, quote, "demand for construction is sure to rebound." Here's the thing. I mean, it always comes back to the pandemic. Lack of new hires is not the only reason for today's workforce limits in the construction industry. Nearly half of construction professionals surveyed are unwilling to be vaccinated against COVID-19. And Brian Termale, who's VP of Public Affairs for AGC, told Texas Monthly in a story that they were writing about construction and COVID, quote, "You've got a lot of skilled craft workers who can't work or won't work because they're not vaccinated and they're getting sick, or they're worried about getting sick and transmitting it to unvaccinated people, or they're vaccinated and they have young children who aren't." It just keeps coming back to COVID. There are a lot of knock-on kind of results of COVID, but it's always there.
And now schools opening up again, it's likely just to have a little bump up again, and just a constant mess until it evens out.
Number 6, excavator automation reaches its next level. So excavator grade control that can command a machine's hydraulic valves is spreading throughout brands to automate functions, reducing demand on operator and making it easier to achieve the desired results. And so features like CAT's grade with assist allow the operator to simply set the desired depth and slope into a monitor and dig simply by pulling back on a single lever. And factory integrated functionality similar to that, automatically matching the cutting edge to a desired result, or returning the bucket to dig positions, or returning to the specified slope. Those things are being replicated throughout the industry, demonstrating efficiency improvements in the 50% range on Deere, Komatsu, Link-Belt, and more brands. So this is something that's taken over the industry.
I love hearing of the advanced engineering that's going on to these massive machines, just because the intelligence that has to go into it, the thought process of let's make this more intuitive and then more impactful for the contractor is just staggering to think about.
It's related to that labor issue. As we struggle to find qualified people to do these jobs, building automation into these machines just reduces that challenge to contractors and project owners.
Here we are at number 5 with an article on how climate affects concrete. While working with concrete may come as second nature to many contractors, it still is one of the trickiest substances to work with due to how quickly it can change when exposed to cold, heat, humidity, and the wind. 4th generation mason Matt DeBarra writes this good overview about what happens when conditions aren't exactly ideal. What I find interesting is the more I learn about concrete, the more I learn that it's resilient and strong once it cures. It can sit there for decades, hundreds of years even. But when it's not cured, it is as fickle as anything can be. If anything goes wrong, there's cracks, there's spalling. It's not going to cure right. It's not at the right temperature. It's amazing that so many contractors get it right so often. I applaud you.
Number 4 on the list is what to know about ground penetrating radar, in case you don't get it just right the first time. So using ground penetrating radar technology adds value to contractors' portfolios, but they first need to understand how it works and how 3D technology enhances the process. You know more about this story than I do, Jonathan. It talks about stepped frequency ground penetrating radar and how that technology is detecting metal deeper into concrete, kind of like an X-ray, but without the need to have access to two sides of the target. Check the story out for what's going on in that technology. It's not a static process anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot of research and work being done on non-destructive testing of concrete to find out the strengths and what's underneath the surface without actually destroying something, to find where is that rebar exactly? Is there utility lines? Is there metal? That proposes its own problem right there. Check it out. It gives you a nice overview of what it looks like. And there's even some research going on to actually take the data that's being bounced back and giving you an actual 3D picture of what's underneath, instead of just squiggly lines and be like, oh, I have to interpret the data. It gives you a picture.
So you can get a sense for how big it is that you're seeing. Yeah.
And number 3 is a podcast I worked on, U.S. housing and 3D concrete printing. I had a great opportunity to speak with Zach Mannheimer, founder and CEO of Alquist 3D, a Virginia-based 3D concrete printing contractor. As one of the early adopters of this technology here in the States, one of the buildings he worked on started construction in June 2021. We spoke about the impact of this technology can have on the construction industry, the potential benefits contractors can find with the technology, and we even spoke about how it works. One idea is that since a contractor can construct a building quickly with a minimal crew, that it could have a great impact toward affordable housing. Actually going to speak with Zach again soon, as he says he figured out a solution to a problem in 3D concrete. So check back soon, and I'll tell you all about it.
Well, and tying this to the last story you talked about, Jonathan, the question that occurred to me when I was looking at this story is, what do you do about expansion joints in 3D printed concrete? It's concrete. Is cracking an issue with this stuff?
Good question, and I will definitely ask.
Well done. All right, number 2 on the list. The 2021 Contractor's Top 50 New Products of the Year, 50 ways to build the future of your business. So this is a project that I've been for years, and it's really an interesting project, because what she does is take your responses to product content that we produce in Equipment Today magazine and on 4constructionpros.com, and we look at the things that have gotten the most attention from you, our audience, and dive a little deeper into what those products are and put them in this list, because, you know, the things that most people are paying attention to, you know, are likely to have some benefit to the whole industry. So check this list out. There's a lot of good stuff here, a lot of innovation, and things that might solve problems for you.
And at the top spot, we have Equipment Share receives $1.2 billion line of credit from Capital One Bank. Alexis, editor of Rental Magazine, covered the details of Capital One's $1.2 billion line of credit for Equipment Share, a full-service equipment rental supplier. The company says that it is a key step in their evolution as they continue to grow. And boy, do they have plans. One goal of theirs is to have over 100 locations across the country by the end of 2021. It's September already, if you believe it or not. They have, 3 months to go?
Yeah.
I wonder where they're at with that.
Yeah. Well, you know, Jonathan, I'm glad I had you with me on this episode. You had so much good stuff on this list. Thanks for your contributions. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We'll have another list for you next week. And until then, stay safe out there.